She packed her bags and left the compound, leaving Alhaji Musa and Jamama to their luxurious life. Not up to a month after Halima left the house in tears, Alhaji Musa became devastated, realizing too late that he had made a grave mistake. He had lost the love of his life, and his new marriage was nothing but a sham. As Halima walked away from the compound, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had finally found the courage to stand up for herself and leave a marriage that was suffocating her. She knew that she would face challenges ahead, but she was determined to make a new life for herself, one where she would be loved and respected. Halima moved to a new town, where she started a new business and built a new life for herself. She was happy and content, but she never forgot the love she had shared with Alhaji Musa. She often thought about him and wondered what might have come over him, her husband right from her teenage. Meanwhile, Alhaji Musa was regretting his decision to marry Jamama. He realized that he had made a mistake and that Halima was the love of his life. He tried to reach out to her, but she had moved on and was living a happy life without him. Jamama, on the other hand, was enjoying the luxurious life that Alhaji Musa had provided for her. She was living in a big house, driving a fancy car, and wearing designer clothes. As the years went by, Jamama became more luxurious and was always making expensive demands. Alhaji Musa's business began to decline. He had lost his focus and his passion, and his business was suffering. He was also facing health problems, and his family was worried about him because even the new wife Jamama is yet to give him a child after 1.5 years. Is Jamama also barren, or there's something to worry about? Will Alhaji go back to beg Halima to come back? Will Alhaji ever have a child? It's getting to 2 years after marriage, and Jamama is yet to have a child. She has started receiving her own dose of barren status. Musa's uncle, who introduced Jamama to Musa, called her aside to question her about why she's yet to conceive a child. He pointed out that it was one of the primary reasons for marrying Musa, and is angry with her. He said, "You know what I can do," with anger and a threatening tone, then walked out on her. During their usual meetings with friends, they stylishly taunt her with sarcastic words about her inability to have a child yet. Her mom always visits her, trying to bring up discussions about why she's yet to conceive. Jamama's world was crushing before her. She started having a dose of what she was giving Halima. She became depressed and desperate to get pregnant within the shortest time possible. She sought help from Malam, a powerful spiritualist, to help her conceive. 3 days later, Jamama visited Baba Adamu in the interior part of Kano. After explaining her ordeal, Baba Adamu gave her a concoction in a black pot to take home. He instructed her to drink it first thing every morning before eating anything. The medicine would last for 7 days. After that, Baba did some incantations over her head, assuring her of the potency and power of the medicine and how many women had conceived after taking it. Jamama left with happiness and joy all over her. When she got home, she hid the pot of medicine in a tight corner where nobody could easily find it. The next day, as early as cockcrow, she took the first dose. It was bitter and smelly, but she had no option. She forced it down her throat and immediately washed her mouth with water. This routine continued until day 7. She was happy and started pressurizing and seducing Alhaji Musa to have intercourse with her at any given opportunity. She became active that month, hoping to get pregnant. Alhaji Musa was confused about why his wife suddenly had a high urge for copulation. Jamama imagined herself pregnant and acting dizzy and lazy. She imagined how she would take good care of herself and her pregnancy and how she would taunt her enemies after giving birth. She had already selected beautiful names for her baby. Oh, how lovely it would be! She stood in front of a mirror and admired herself, thinking about how the pregnancy would look good on her. It wasn't long before 1 month passed, and there was no sign of pregnancy. She had her usual monthly flow and cried in tears. She doubled her bedroom activities with her husband, but the next month came, and there was no pregnancy. She cried her eyes out and fell deeper into depression, having many sleepless nights. She thought of leaving the marriage, but memories of how she taunted Halima until she left Alhaji Musa for her came back. She remembered everything she did to Halima and cried in regret, bitterly. So, if she didn't get pregnant, someone would come and replace her, and she would be thrown out of her husband's house too. She questioned herself and said, God forbid. She stood up and said, I must get pregnant at all costs. She thought to herself, I don't think I'm the problem, perhaps Alhaji is impotent. If not, how come he can't impregnate 2 healthy and young girls? He must be the reason, but she couldn't confront him or persuade him to go for a medical checkup. He would feel insulted, and who knows what he would do next. In that case, she had to try another option since she was convinced that her husband's gun wasn't hitting the target. She couldn't lose her home. She came up with a plan to start seeing another man to help her conceive. She met a young, good-looking man named Abdul and hid her married status from him. Within a short time, she used her money to influence the young man into having a serious relationship with her. As time went on, Jamama became fond of Abdul. He was handsome, energetic, and romantic. She discovered it wasn't just a game she wanted to play with him, she was totally in love with Abdul already. She loved spending time with him. Somehow, Alhaji Musa started noticing her sudden change in attitude towards him. At first, he ignored it, trying to get it right, but something must be wrong somewhere. Just a few months back, his wife was all over his body, always demanding intercourse. It had been 2 weeks since she last tried to kiss him. Even when he made moves, she pushed him aside. Just last night, he really wanted to have her, but she pushed him away in an irritating manner. What could be the problem? Well, Musa thought to himself that maybe she's having a bad time, but as time went on, Musa discovered that she was no longer attracted to him. It had been 5 months since they last copulated. She didn't allow him to touch her, no matter how much he begged her. One day, Musa sat down in tears, reminiscing about the lovely times he had with Halima, how lovely and compassionate she was, and how beautiful a person Halima was. "I really miss you, my lovely wife. I'll do anything to have you back," Musa said to himself. The next day, Musa set out looking for his lovely wife. He traveled from one state to another, looking for her everywhere, but didn't see her. He was devastated. His business was down, his health was down, and his home was a living hell with no peace of mind. So, one day, he set out for a business trip to Abuja. He had a meeting with the Minister of Agriculture, to whom he had applied earlier to supply some agricultural produce from Kaduna. This contract was his only hope of reviving his business, so he prayed to Allah to bless him with the contract. On getting to the Ministry of Agriculture, he was directed to the meeting hall. Soon, the meeting began, and it was time to sign the necessary documents. Musa took his papers to the Director of Projects, where he met Halima, his beautiful wife, who was the Director of Projects in charge of allocating projects to contractors. Musa froze at the sight of Halima. He literally started shaking and sweating, unsure what to do. Should he start apologizing for the wrong he did to her? Should he just behave calmly and present the documents for signing? Should he run out? Musa was restless and confused. Halima simply said to him in a low tone, "Give me the papers and wait outside. When I'm done, I'll send my aide to bring your papers." Musa stood for some seconds, thinking, is it that Halima doesn't recognize me, or what? Just then, Halima looked up and repeated herself. Musa had no option but to obey and wait outside. Musa's papers were returned to him after examination, but he refused to go. He waited till the close of work to see Halima. When Halima was done for the day, on her way out, Musa ran to her in tears, knelt down in public, holding and begging her to just listen to him. Halima was surprised and felt embarrassed. She told him to get up because he was creating a scene, and people were looking at them. Musa stood up. Halima took him in her car, and they sat outside, discussing. It was during the discussion that Halima told Musa she had a child, a boy, almost 2 years old. Musa was heartbroken that his wife had moved on. Halima giggled and told him she was still single. Musa was surprised and asked about the father of the baby. She just laughed it off and took him to her mansion in Abuja. When they got home, he asked her to call out her son, Jubra, to come. When he came, meet your son. Musa was speechless, surprised. With tears rolling down his cheeks, he slowly looked at Halima and slowly looked at his son, full of joy and surprise. He slowly lifted up his son and looked into his eyes with lots of affection, holding him tight and starting to cry. Halima explained to him that she was 3 weeks pregnant when she left his house. One of the reasons she had to leave because she was scared of having a miscarriage due to the harsh treatment, and Jamama might deliberately hurt her if she found out she was pregnant. "By the way, how is your wife?" Jamima. "She's fine," Musa replied in a fast tone and begged to keep that aside first. While they were discussing, Musa's phone rang. It was Jamima, sounding low and cold. She informed Musa that she had been hospitalized and asked him to do his best to come back home. The call ended. Musa explained everything to Halima and told her he would be back within the week to see her. They exchanged contacts, and Musa left. Immediately Musa got to Kano, he went to the hospital, only to see Jamima looking so sickly and weak. He was moved to tears and asked what was wrong with her. She couldn't talk. Musa went to the doctor's office to inquire about her health. Just then, the doctor told Musa that Jamima was HIV positive. At that point, Musa broke down in tears, crying like a baby. "Oh, I'm finished. Jamima has killed me." He was uncontrollably crying, but the doctor consoled him and advised him to take a HIV test, which he accepted. The test was carried out, and it came out negative. He was happy and relieved, but doubted the result and asked that a second test be conducted. It came out negative again. Then the doctor asked him when he last slept with Jamima. He said about 6 months ago, as she doesn't allow him to touch her. The doctor told him to count himself lucky else. Few days after Jamima was discharged, Musa didn't ask her about the mystery of her HIV status. He just quietly invited his parents and Jamima's parents. When everyone had come, he explained what had been happening from the first day till date and asked her to explain what happened at the hospital and how she contracted it. Jamima came out in shame and confessed her desperation to have a child, which led her to visit Malam Ademo. After the medication didn't work, she started having an affair with Abdul to conceive, thinking her husband was impotent. She was disgraced and asked to pack to her father's house. Just then, Musa stood up and announced to them that he had found his beloved wife, Halima, and she would be coming back home. Everyone was so happy except his uncle, who introduced Jamima to Musa. He stood up and confronted Musa, saying he should marry another woman instead of bringing back that barren witch. Everyone in the meeting rebuked him for saying such a thing about Halima. 1 week later, Halima and her son, Jubra, came back home to meet the whole family welcoming them back. It was such a loving and beautiful moment. The whole family unanimously apologized to Halima, and they organized a welcome ceremony for Halima and Jubra. You see, desperation can lead us down a dangerous path, but it's never too late to turn back and seek forgiveness. We must always be mindful of our actions and their consequences, and we must never give up on love and redemption. As Alhaji Musa and Halima's story comes to an end, we are reminded that love can conquer all, even in the darkest of times. And we are grateful for the reminder that forgiveness and redemption are always possible, no matter how far we may have strayed.